The first thing you should know about slushy machines is they are all more or less basically the same. The way they work is they have a cylinder in the middle. It gets really cold and it freezes whatever is around it. And then it has an auger that spins, and the purpose of this is to kind of scrape off whatever ice or slushy builds up on it. And that is more or less how the slushy machine works. Now, the things that are different about slushy machines are, for one, size. You do have a slight variation on size, though most are more or less the same. But the other difference is just the overall design, especially with the buttons. I've tried about 10 different slushy machines, and honestly, I don't think it matters too much how the buttons work. They all have presets. The one thing I would say about the buttons is the brighter the buttons are, usually the better, especially if you're ever going to use these outside. I had an instance where I used this outside, couldn't see the buttons at all. That kind of made things difficult. But the other thing you should know about slushy machines is not everything can be turned into a slushy. For a slushy machine to work well, you do need high enough sugar or alcohol content. So for example, if you want to make a slushy out of diet soda, you can do that, but you still have to add sugar to it for it to actually work. There are some other artificial sweeteners that you can use, but the main thing to know here is different liquids turn into slushy in a different way. For example, something like grape juice is going to have a lower freezing temperature than other things. So you just need to be aware you can't just pour whatever you want to in it and expect it to make a perfect slushy every time. And going along with that, I would say the other important thing to know about slushy machines is that the presets and the recipes that come with your slushy machines, they are nice as guides, but I would say the more important thing is to actually experiment. And one thing that I do think is really important to look for when you're looking to get a slushy machine is that you have manual temperature control. The reality is pressing the slushy button for one liquid versus another liquid might give you different results. So you kind of just need to know what works well for your preference, for the liquid you put in, and at what temperature. So if you can find a slushy machine with manual temperature control, I think that's the way to go. The fourth thing I think you should know about slushy machines, this is kind of a disappointment to me, is you can't really make ice cream with a slushy machine. Now again, I've tried about 10 different slushy machines and I've tried to make ice cream in every single one, and you can kind of come close to something like soft serve ice cream. I don't know exactly what it is. Here's a clip of me making ice cream with an ice cream machine, and here's a clip of me making ice cream with a slushy machine. And the different result you get is when you do it with a slushy machine, it seems to be really fluffy, like it's putting too much air in it or something like that, and it just doesn't have the nice, dense, creamy consistency of ice cream at all. You can get it to have the flavor of ice cream, it just doesn't really have that nice, creamy texture. And I've tried a bunch of different recipes, I've tried it at a bunch of different temperatures, and I think perhaps one limiting factor is with a slushy machine, you don't have any control over the speed, so you're just kind of left up to how fast the auger moves, which when you compare it with an ice cream machine, it looks like it does move a little bit faster. It's not pushing as much. I'm not really sure why you can't make ice cream as well in a slushy machine, but I know for me, every single experiment I've tried, it just hasn't come out as good. One thing I have done is after I make ice cream in a slushy machine, if you just put it in the freezer for a while, it does seem to have a little bit more of the consistency of real ice cream. So that's something you can try if you really want to make ice cream with it. But despite a lot of the slushy machines saying that you can make ice cream, you should expect the results to be a little bit different from actual ice cream or soft serve ice cream. And the last thing I would say about slushy machines, in my opinion, the two most important factors are how fast does it get cold and how big is the reservoir where you put the liquid. Now, as far as how fast it gets cold, each machine I saw listed on Amazon is going to say more or less the same thing, about 15 to 20 minutes to turn a liquid into a slushy. Now that's really going to depend on how much you put in, how you change the settings and stuff like that. But I did an experiment where I got a bunch of slushy machines, I put them all together, I got the same exact liquid, same amount, put them all in at the same time, and this is the one that got coldest the fastest. I was really impressed with this. One thing I do want to point out with this is I don't know if this was impacted by the reservoir size or not, because the second fastest slushy machine that I tried had a larger reservoir at about, I think, 85 ounces. And so it's possible that because I put the same amount of liquid in, the liquid wasn't touching as much of the metal cylinder, so that's why it took a little bit longer. But these two are my favorite slushy machines. And speaking of the size of the reservoir, I think the important thing to know there is most machines have a reservoir of about 65 ounces, which is about the same size as a 2-liter of soda. But because of how this works, you can't put the whole soda in because it does expand a bit. All slushy machines have kind of a max fill line, but this model has a reservoir of about 85 ounces, which you can put the entire 2-liter soda in. And for me personally, I think that's actually a pretty big deal, the ability to put a whole 2-liter in, especially when you do parties or you do events or you have it outside. It's just a lot easier to manage that way. So after all those slushy machines I have tested, for me, the most important thing is how fast it gets cold, which you can look at these two models. They get coldest the fastest. And then the other thing is just having that large reservoir. Now, again, there are other things like the button displays. I don't care too much for that. There are a couple different handle styles. There's one where you can kind of twist it and then one where you can pull. I would say go with the one you can pull. It's a lot easier for people to use. Slushy machines are great, especially in the summer. They're all more or less the same. Get one that gets cold quick, has a big reservoir. I think you'll be pretty happy.